Are Metal Gears alive? Is your knee-jerk reaction to say no? They're machines designed to fulfill a human-made purpose. Most Metal Gears give at least the illusion of life. Most mimic human life by walking on two legs, and some of them, like Ray and the Gekkos, look like they bleed what looks like blood when injured. Metal Gears roar or sing or even moo like cows. Is any of this enough to label them alive, though? Welcome back. If you're new here, my name is Luffy and welcome to my channel. I talk video games and character analysis, so if that's your thing, subscribe and stick around. Heads up, this video will have spoilers for Metal Gear Solid Peace Walker. How do we determine if something is alive? I thought it would be easy to find a list of qualifying factors to determine whether or not something was alive, but it turns out the scientific community has yet to establish a definitive list of criteria for living versus non-living beings. Most of the lists I've seen online list the following as a loose criteria to determine whether or not something is alive. The being needs to grow, reproduce, self-regulate, and have the ability to respond to outside stimuli. Let's go through this list one by one and see how the Metal Gears of Metal Gear Solid hold up. First up is growth. None of the Metal Gears grow in any way. They're made out of metal, and although metal expands when heated, it doesn't grow in the way an organic body does as their cells duplicate. So we're off to a weak start if we're here to argue that Metal Gears are alive. Now we have reproduction. Though reproduction as an argument for life is on shaky ground. There are plenty of creatures that are obviously alive that can't reproduce. Hybrid animals like mules can't reproduce, so does that mean they aren't alive? Of course not. Banana plants, did you know bananas don't grow on trees and their plant is actually considered a herb? Have been bred by humans to maximize their fruit output, so their fruit no longer has seeds. No seeds means no natural reproduction for the plant. In order to get more banana plants, people need to split plants to duplicate them. Does this mean banana plants aren't alive? No. Metal Gear Rays are duplicated much like how bananas are. They're manufactured and cloned. So if bananas are considered alive despite their inability to reproduce, then why not Metal Gears? Next on our criteria is self-regulation. Something's ability to maintain homeostasis is considered to be alive. Homeostasis is the tendency toward a relatively stable equilibrium between interdependent elements, especially as maintained by physiological processes. For example, people sweat to cool off and maintain homeostasis. People aren't the only thing that can cool themselves off to self-regulate their temperature, though. Our laptops have fans to kick on at different speeds depending on how hot it is at the time. The fans adjust to maintain homeostasis for our laptops so they don't spontaneously combust on our laps. Cars have a cooling system as well, and I'm sure Metal Gears have their own cooling systems too, among other things, to keep them functioning in the heat of battle. Lastly, we have a creature's ability to respond to outside stimuli. We have plenty of examples of Metal Gears operating under an AI responding to outside stimuli. In MGS4, a Gekko finds Snavid's discarded cigarette and uses it as evidence that he's in the immediate area and searches the area to try and find him. All Metal Gears controlled by an AI respond to the battles they're in. They attack the ones who attack them, while trying to avoid being hit themselves. The list of criteria that determines whether or not something is alive is a loose one, with living creatures we can all agree are living not always hitting every point on the list. What does that mean for Metal Gears? If we judge Metal Gears by the same list, can we determine that they're alive if they're given the same wiggle room as living beings like mules and bananas? What makes a machine a machine? The general definition of a machine is that it's an apparatus designed to perform specific tasks. Your gaming console runs disks, your car transports you places, your air purifier filters and cleans the air. What is a Metal Gear designed to do? Metal Gears are the next step in the evolution of weapons. Most of them are designed to be nuclear capable, able to launch a nuke against anywhere in the world. Machines aren't the only thing that's been designed by humans to perform a specific task, though. All domesticated plants and animals were domesticated for a purpose. Dogs, specifically, were bred to fulfill the role their breed was designed to fill. Border collies were bred to herd and protect livestock. Bananas, we're back on bananas, were designed to be as delicious and as edible as possible by humans. The definition for what makes a machine can be borrowed too by living things that have been modified and bred by humans. When do we consider something alive? Does something need to be thinking and feeling? The AI-controlled Metal Gear Rays Raiden fights at the end of MGS2 cry out in pain when they're corrupted by Emma's virus. Again, the Gekko searching for Snavid analyzes his cigarette, obviously recognizing that as a sign he's nearby, and thinking to search the area. All AI-controlled Metal Gears think and make decisions. Does something need to be able to respond to outside stimuli in order to be considered alive? All the Metal Gears controlled by AI respond to attack. Metal Gear Peace Walker switches between launching a nuke and responding to BB's attack, switching back and forth to defense mode. Speaking of Metal Gear Peace Walker, Peace Walker is a special case. Towards the end of MGS-PW, Peace Walker is projecting launch data to NORAD, making them believe that a nuclear strike is imminent. They argue over whether or not to retaliate, and the argument sways in favor of returning the nuclear strike, unknowing that the data they're receiving is fake. BB does everything in his power to try and destroy Peace Walker before that can happen, but he just doesn't have the artillery for it. Huey reveals that the only attack that can stop Peace Walker's false transmission is a nuclear strike. At a loss of what to do, they brainstorm that if they somehow got Peace Walker into the nearby lake, that the water pressure would breach its holes and drown the AI controlling it, stopping the nuclear launch. There's no way they can get such a large, heavy machine into the lake by themselves. When all seems lost, however, Peace Walker straightens up and walks itself into the lake. It's heavily implied that the boss's spirit possessed Peace Walker to make it walk into the lake. Do you consider Peace Walker as alive if the boss possessed Peace Walker? Does the possession by a human spirit make something alive, or does it just make it possessed? If you feel no Metal Gear matches the criteria to be considered to be alive, where does that leave the cyborgs of the series like Raiden? Are the cyborgs more machine than human? Raiden can't reproduce, now that he's a cyborg. His cells don't grow or replicate, and his body was designed to perform a task, be a working body for Raiden's brain to pilot. He fits the criteria for machine more than the criteria of being alive. When do you consider something to be alive? Where do you draw the line? We did a poll here on YouTube asking if Metal Gears were alive, and the majority of you voted no, Metal Gears aren't alive. The comments were super interesting though, because it seemed more like a gray area to a lot of you. It's a gray area for me too. I wouldn't consider any of the human-piloted Metal Gears alive, but for me, the AI-piloted Metal Gears are another story. Maria Costa 428 commented, "I'd say they're alive. As every living organism, they can go back on their steps and see what they did wrong and do better next time. I'd never thought about Metal Gears learning from their mistakes. In battle, you definitely need to be able to think on your feet and learn what works and what doesn't work against your enemy. And you have to learn that fast or else lose to your opponent." Mini Andrew Mini 1 pointed out, "If Rising is canon, then a lot of the robots from them potentially definitely are alive. Look at Raiden's robot dog." Which is a really great point to bring up. I hadn't really been thinking about the robots from Metal Gear Rising, but only because Rising leans more into fantasy, and their robots are clearly alive. Raiden's robot dog brings up a lot of really great points about freedom and what it means to be alive, and I actually have a video on that I'll link in the description for y'all to check out if you're interested. Metal Gears often give the illusion of life. They scream in pain, they bleed, they engage in complicated battles without the input of humans. Like most complex machinery, they must have some way to maintain equilibrium within themselves to keep from overheating or malfunctioning. Is this enough to determine whether or not they're alive though? And if this isn't enough to definitively decide they're alive, where does that leave the cyborgs of the series? Are they not alive too? What do you think? Thank you so much for making it to the end of today's video. If you liked it, share it with someone who wants to know more about Metal Gear Solid lore. If you need more MGS content, check out my Patreon. I upload articles I write on upcoming videos or just thought pieces on MGS in general. Or join us in Discord. We're always talking about MGS. More importantly than that though, please take care of yourself and I'll catch y'all in the next one. Thank you.